And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is. You can eventually turn it, you can eventually become a master of it. It's the only way to become a master of something, to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is.
everything that makes me feel alive. I swear you make me feel somehow. I stumble over words I haven't said in years. It's so different with you. Forever I'll beg this feeling to stay. Dear, I hope that you do too. 'Cause when I lay awake at night, the thought of you brings peace of mind. And I can't lie, despite my trials of like this peace for all my life. For all my life. Honey, it's okay, you're afraid of falling. You don't have to say it out loud, but you take another step off the edge, we're floating. We don't have to ever look down, but you feels good. It's a heavy go beside me.
Protein. It's so fucking good, but I haven't had good protein yet. Ooh, these look good.
Crispy and salted fries get slid into a box. They toss some white cheddar cheese curds onto the grill, slather that cheese and those fries in a healthy amount of their gravy. They give the cheese a flip and cover those fries in all of that melty cheese. These are the poutine fries from Tony Beef in Galloway, New Jersey, and they have just the right amount of cheese. Crispy and
That's how they should look, but what most of them do is they just put like the curds in the fucking fries, and I don't like that. I prefer it melted. Oh my god. So I love both of these men. Benjamin Babish and Maddie Matheson. Uh Look, he's bald. You don't like his beard? His is well kempt. Have you ever his what? Yeah. Have you ever seen? Yeah. Have you ever seen regular show? Damn it. It's a good binging with Babish. Yeah, the shit. You wanna do The Simpsons? You wanna do Disney? Every time I watch Ratatouille. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish. I want to thank you all very much for participating in the Reddit AMA last week. So this week, I'm going to be recreating the top voted suggestion, which was Ratatouille. Now, I've been told by some very emphatic commenters that this is not real ratatouille. This is something called confit bialdi, which is sort of like a modern spin on ratatouille. So we're going to start off by blanching some tomatoes for about 30 seconds until the skins start to peel, and then we're going to peel them before roasting some peppers. Yellow, orange, and red. Or just red, who cares? Char on all sides over an open flame until blackened. Make sure you use metal tongs, not plastic ones like me. I'm being stupid right now. Cover the hot steaming peppers with some aluminum foil and let them steam in their own steaminess for a few minutes. This will help soften the peppers and make them a little bit easier to peel, which we're going to do right now. Peel off all the black stuff and you're left with these beautiful roasted tricolor peppers, which we're going to combine in a high-powered blender with 3 Roma tomatoes, a few sprigs of parsley, 2 whole garlic cloves, a few sprigs of picked thyme leaves, a quarter of a white onion, and a little bit of chicken stock that we're going to pour in as the blender is running. Oh, a little bit of olive oil before I forget. Now, I don't want to discolor the mixture too much, so I'm also going to use a little bit of hot water before pressing the vegetables down into the blender and creating sort of like a roasted red pepper soup. The cool thing about high-powered blenders is that it actually cooks the mixture if you let it run at high speed long enough. Now it's time to create those famous shingles of sliced vegetables. We need to use a very, very sharp knife on the tomatoes to create thin little slices, and then use a mandolin to make life a little bit easier with 1 yellow and 1 green squash. And then my mandolin kind of sucks, so I'm going to slice my eggplant by hand. Chop a little bit of fresh rosemary to sprinkle over top, before spreading a thin, even layer of our roasted red pepper sauce on the bottom of a rectangular or oval roaster. Now we're going to start shingling vegetables, alternating in a pattern across the bottom of the dish. Now, this was my first crack, and I cut the vegetables a little bit too thick and stacked them a little bit too far apart. We'll revisit that later. For now, drizzle a little bit of olive oil across the top of the vegetables, season with salt, freshly ground pepper, and our finely chopped fresh rosemary before topping with a sheet of parchment paper that we've cut to the shape of our baking dish and placing in a 225-degree oven for about 90 minutes until it comes out looking like this. Now, this tasted really good, but for that Pixar-style plating, we need thinner vegetables stacked closer together, cooked for less time, like so. Into a ring mold, we're going to stack some vegetables vertically, then horizontally, like so. Lift it off a little bit slower than necessary for a dramatic effect. Swirl some olive oil and leftover red pepper sauce around the outside, along with some fresh picked parsley leaves. And let's see if this is good enough to save a restaurant from an evil reviewer.
Okay, guys. First things first. Just bring 1 Friday tea party. And steaming hot. Good. I need to go to the bathroom.
Whoa, okay, what was in that ratatouille? Just vegetables, I think. Okay. Whoops, and I forgot Remy's single chive garnish over top. My bad. Hang on, let's see if I can remember what happened to my hamster when I was 5. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the Bao Buns from Pixar's Bao, aka one of those rare moments I get to use a recipe directly from the source. Because director Domi Shi provided her mother's recipe for Bao, which starts with 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 3/4 teaspoon of dry yeast, tiny whisked together before adding 500 milliliters or 2.1 cups of water to the party. We're just going to fold that together using a rubber spatula until a cohesive dough forms, at which point we're going to turn it out onto a lightly floured countertop, kneading and adding flour or water as necessary until it's not too sticky, not too dry. Then we're going to lightly oil a bowl for rising purposes, plop our dough inside, cover, and let rest for 2 hours. And please take note, this is the time during which you should make the pork filling. I didn't do this, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Anyway, after its 2-hour rest, the dough should about double in size. Mine is still pretty sticky, so I'm going to turn it out onto a heavily floured work surface. I'm going to give it a little bit of kneading just to sort of help it come together. And then I'm going to do what she did in the short, which is punch a hole in the center of the dough and stretch it out using what's called the windmill technique, I think. And then I'm chopping that guy into 2 pieces, stretching them out end to end, and then dividing those into 1-inch pieces. And see, this is where I messed up. The filling wasn't ready, so the dough balls had to sit out for too long, and they ended up proofing twice, so I ended up having to make it all over again. So as is sometimes the case on this show, do as I say, not as I do. So now for the filling, I'm finely chopping up a small carrot, 2 scallions, and a small head of Chinese cabbage. Then in a large bowl, I'm placing half a pound of ground pork and sauteing the other half in a little bit of vegetable oil until it's nice and golden brown. Then, once it is so, I'm bringing it back to the bowl and adding it to the raw pork. I'm sure that she does this to amp up the porky flavor of our filling. Then once you've got that all combined, it's time to add our Chinese cabbage, carrot, scallions, and some flavor boosters, including but not limited to 1 to 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon of very difficult to pour and measure oyster sauce, 2 to 3 teaspoons of equally difficult to measure Chinese cooking wine, 1 teaspoon of much easier to measure toasted sesame oil, or go ahead and add more if you really know how to party, 1 teaspoon, let's make it 2 teaspoons of olive oil, a half a teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder, and salt and freshly ground pepper to taste. Granted, this is kind of hard to do when you can't actually taste it, but just eyeball it. Plus, we're going to add 1 beaten egg. Then, with optionally gloved hands, we're going to mix the whole affair together until homogeneous. Then it's time to take a crack at doing something that I've been dreading for a long time, filling and shaping bao. First, we're rolling out our dough pieces to about 4 inches wide and then dumping about a tablespoon's worth of pork filling into the center. Then we got to close it up using this complicated pleating and twisting technique, which I didn't do a very good job of on my first go around, so I'll highlight how to do this later. This recipe ended up making about 24 bao with plenty of leftover pork filling, so you might want to double the dough recipe, because once they're rolled up, they freeze beautifully. But I'm going to place these in my bamboo steamer basket and steam them for 15 minutes, and then letting them rest undisturbed for 5 minutes before even taking a peek at them, hands off. So 20 excruciatingly hungry minutes later, we've got our bao buns. And here is where I learned another very valuable lesson. You've got to oil the parchment paper with which you line your bamboo steamer, or else you're going to have this happen. Your delicate dumpling wrapper is going to rip, and once again, you're going to have to start all over. And now, after a very long day, we're going to keep our fingers crossed and release. Nice. And now, finally, it's time to give these things a try, and I gotta say, they're really, really good. The filling is super flavorful, the wrapper is nice and chewy, but subconsciously, I had been really in the mood for char siu bao, which usually has a lighter, fluffier bun and an alien red pork filling. So why don't we take a crack at that? First, we're going to start by making a marinade for our pork, 2 tablespoons of white sugar, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, 1 tablespoon of fermented red bean paste, a tablespoon of soy sauce, a tablespoon of Chinese cooking wine, 4 meticulously crushed cloves of garlic, and ideally some freshly grated ginger, but I'm just going to use some dried stuff. That's all I have on hand. It'll be fine. Mix that together, and then it's time to prep our pork. I'm going with some thick slices of pork belly that I'm going to remove the skin from, place in a plastic parcel, and dump our marinade over top. Then we're going to refrigerate for 24 hours. Be sure to place this on a plate or in a glass bowl to prevent cross-contamination with other things in the fridge. It's the next day, and for the dough, we're going to measure out 300 grams of all-purpose flour, to which we're going to add 40 grams of white sugar, which is going to act as food to 2 teaspoons of yeast. And then to make our yeast grow up big and strong, we're going to add 185 milliliters of whole milk heated to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. And then we're dropping our dough hook into the mixture and kneading for 8 minutes until a smooth, supple ball of dough forms. Then we are removing the dough from and oiling up the bowl, returning the dough to the bowl, covering and resting for 2 hours as before. And since we learned our lesson earlier, we're going to prep our pork filling in the meantime. In a small bowl, we are combining equal parts, about 2 tablespoons worth of oyster sauce, hoisin sauce, a heaping teaspoon of honey, maybe a teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice powder, and about a tablespoon each of soy sauce, Chinese cooking wine, and fermented red bean paste. And there you have it, char siu sauce, which is kind of like a delicious Chinese barbecue sauce. Give that a little tiny whiskin, and then it's time to prep our pork. First, we're going to lightly oil a grate set in a rimmed baking sheet. And why don't we line it with foil too? This is probably going to get pretty messy. And then how about we get this pork out onto a tray? Nice. Okay, and then we're going to divide our char siu sauce in half, because we're going to use some for brushing down the pork belly and the rest for tossing with the finished meat. And now this pork is going into a 450 degree Fahrenheit oven for about 10 minutes until it just starts developing a nice char on the outside, and then we're going to flip and brush it down again, place it back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes until it starts charring up again, rinsing and repeating until we reach 180 degrees internal and the exterior is beautifully caramelized and nicely charred. Then we're going to let this cool until it's nice and cooled off, and then we're going to chop the belly into nice little tiny pieces, which we're going to then in turn toss with the remaining char siu sauce. Try not to eat this with a spoon like it's a bowl of cereal, because it's headed into our bao, you selfish weirdo. From this point on, it's the same process as before, but I got a little bit better at rolling up these baozi, as they're sometimes called. So basically, you just want to pleat the edges together like this, going all the way around until the filling is encased, and then give it a little twist to seal shut. This is how it gets that chubby little dumpling baby look. Then we are placing onto our generously oiled parchment paper inside of our bamboo steamer, steaming for 15 minutes and letting rest for 5. And there you go, some dim sum style char siu bao, which are intensely tasty. Are they better than Domi Shi's mom's bao? Absolutely not. They're totally different and both totally delicious, and I'd happily raise either of them as my own child.
Oh, Edgar, you sly old fox. It's creme de la creme a la Edgar. Just a few dunks. Ooh, very good. My compliments to the chef.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week I forgot to shoot that sort of intro walk-in shot, so we're diving right into it. And for creme de la creme a la Edgar, we need crackers, what kind of looked like Ritz crackers to me. So we're starting with 10 ounces of all-purpose flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar. We're just going to process that together a little bit, just to let those dry ingredients and leaveners get to know each other. And then we're adding 6 tablespoons of refrigerator cold butter. We're almost making a pie crust here, but in addition to the butter, we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil to give a little bit of that snack aisle processed goodness. Speaking of processed, we're gonna process this together in the food processor. Just pulse a few times and then let it run for about 5 seconds until everybody's nice and sandy. Then into the feed tube, we're going to slowly drizzle 2/3 of a cup of ice water while the machine's running, just until a ball of dough forms, about 10 seconds. Then we're going to take this guy out, wrap him up in plastic wrap, and let him rest in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes. We're not being as cautious with this dough as we would a pie crust, because we don't want it to puff as much as a pie crust would puff if a pie crust could puff wood. What? Anyway, we are turning this out onto a very liberally floured work surface and rolling it out as thin as humanely possible. It helps to have one of these rolling pins with little pacifiers on the side that help you maintain an even thickness, but no matter what you're rolling with, just try to roll it out as thin as you possibly can. Then we need to utilize a fluted biscuit cutter to give our crackers that signature Ritz look. I think this one's a little bit small. I'm going to go one bigger. There we go. That's a cracker. And we're simply arranging these on a parchment-lined baking sheet that we are going to insert into a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven, but not before trying in vain to cut that little cross pattern into each individual cracker, only to give up and go for the signature Ritz 7 dots. 6 on the outside, 1 in the middle. I didn't even have to do a Google image search. Now we're brushing these boys down with butter. These are, after all, butter crackers, and they require a great multitude of butter applications. Okay, now these guys are ready to go into that oven that I talked about for 10 to 15 minutes until they're nice and brown, but not too brown, because we're going to brush them down again one more time with butter and immediately sprinkle them with a little bit of kosher salt. I emphasize immediately because the butter dries very quickly and you need the salt to stick before it does. And with that second butter bath, we got ourselves a nice golden cracker that I gotta say tastes exactly like a Ritz. And this only took like an hour, so much easier than going to the store and spending $2 on arguably a better version. On to creme de la creme a la Edgar. I'm starting off with a pint of heavy cream, to which I'm going to add an equal part of whole milk. Then Edgar adds 5 things: vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, sugar, and sleeping pills. The last one, of course, being optional and probably illegal. Now, he used vanilla extract, but I'm gonna go with a whole bean. This is, after all, for human and not kitty consumption, so I'm going to scrape a whole vanilla bean and add it to our milky mixture, along with the pot itself for a little bit of added flavor. Now, to 4 cups of beverage, I think you're going to want to add between 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and maybe another 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. You can use the pre-ground stuff if you want, but freshly grated really is worlds better. Grab your tiny whisk and let's give this guy a stir. I think tiny whisk could use a little calcium anyway, so he can grow up big and whoa, well that's proof, kids, drink your milk. I'm also going to add just a little pinch of salt and a generous shake of barbiturate sleeping aids, just like they would have prescribed very safely in Paris in 1910. And I gotta say, this stuff tastes real good. What we've effectively made here is hot vanilla, the slightly worse cousin of hot chocolate, but it's still real good, and I do recommend you trying it. But let's try it the way Roquefort the mouse tries it, dipping a cracker in it and taking little mouse bites. And what we're effectively doing here is dipping pie crust pieces into hot vanilla, so it's pretty good. I would probably just have one or the other, not both, but still, no complaints. However, I don't think that I'm getting the full Roquefort experience. For that, I think we need to think like a mouse, or rather make a bigger cracker, which is not exactly what a mouse would do, but just let me have my catchphrases, please. So, same dough, rolled out, cut with a dinner plate as a mold. Then I was kind of stumped on how to give it the fluted edges, but then I found this ravioli cutter that worked pretty well. The fluting's kind of small, but good enough for me. Also, this is an opportunity to cut the same pattern into this cracker that we see in the movie. But other than that, same procedure. Brush the whole thing down with butter, 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for 10 to 15 minutes, rotating once during baking. I know that this is not quite to scale, but this is as big as my baking sheets would allow me. And there you have it, about as big a cracker as I've ever seen, which I'm going to again brush down with butter and hurriedly sprinkle with salt, and attempt to dip into a larger bowl of our creme de la creme a la Edgar. Again, sorry, I know it's not to scale, but I didn't want to be too wasteful. And the odds of me eating all this cracker and drinking all this milk are very extremely not going to happen. However, I will enjoy a few mouse-like nibbles before fixing myself a mug of this hot vanilla, because let me tell you, that stuff is good. Not hot chocolate good, but good. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we are ringing in the new year with the storied gray stuff from Beauty and the Beast, which I thought this might have food under it. I guess we have to make it. Now, I know the folks at Disney said to their animator, Frank, just draw us a plate of appetizers, okay? Nobody is going to agonize over it 30 years later on a big TV trying to figure out what each element is. So just put some appetizers on there. We don't care if they don't make sense. So anyway, over here we have a mystery tea sandwich. I think it might be some kind of fig spread, maybe with some goat cheese or something. That'd be cool. Then up here we've got some salmon mousse with a cucumber and what I think is a buckwheat blini. Then we got ourselves a pig in a blanket. No mistaking that. Then over here I have no earthly idea what this is. Again, I think Frank was just like, I'm going to keep my head down, do my job. Michael Eisner is not going to fire me. Not today. I have a pension to think about. Then up here we've got a cucumber tea sandwich. Pretty simple. And down here I think we've got some salmon roe on top of another buckwheat blini. Definitely not my favorite. Then we got a little roll of meat with what looks like a little strip of cheese and maybe some roasted peppers on top. And then finally, the gray stuff. Pictured here twice, which has been erroneously reported and maliciously marketed as some kind of cookies and cream red velvet cupcake nonsense. But this is a tray of hors d'oeuvres. What we got here is most likely foie gras or chicken liver mousse. I'm going with the latter because I don't want people to get mad at me. So I'm patting dry about half a pound of chicken livers and then finally mincing one shallot and a little bit of fresh thyme, maybe a teaspoon worth. And then we are headed over to the stovetop where we are preheating a little bit of vegetable oil over medium-high heat until shimmering, adding the chicken livers and letting sit undisturbed for 1 to 2 minutes until they are nice and browned on one side. Give them a little flip so they can start browning on the other side, and we're going to add our shallots and thyme. Saute together for another minute just to let those flavors get to know each other a little bit, and then we're going to deglaze with maybe a 1/4 cup of cognac. If you have a fire extinguisher nearby and you know what you're doing, go ahead and flame this if you like, but it doesn't really do anything for the flavor. It's kind of just for showboating. And now that the livers are brown on the outside and pink on the inside, I'm going to add the zest of half a lemon, kill the heat, let it cool down for like 30 seconds, and then add a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Swirl it around a little bit just to make sure that everybody's acquainted, and then it's time to head over to an awaiting blender or food processor, into which we are going to deposit the contents of our pan. Then we're going to crank the blender on a medium-low speed, and one chunk at a time add 1 1/2 sticks of unsalted butter. Yeah, that's a lot of butter, but this is also going to be a lot of delicious. So once all the butter is added, we're going to crank this thing on high and blend it until very, very smooth, and then we're going to pass it through a fine mesh strainer to catch any little bits. And there you have it, chicken liver mousse, and we need to cover it with the plastic wrap pressed down onto the surface of the mousse, because that's how this stuff becomes gray when it oxidizes. So next up we're going to make some salmon mousse. I'm starting with about 3-4 ounces of smoked salmon, to which I'm going to add the juice of 1/2 of 1 lemon and 4 ounces or half a bar of Neufchâtel cheese, because that feels a little bit more French and appropriate, but it's virtually identical to cream cheese, so you can just go ahead and use cream cheese if you want. Puree until smooth and mousse-like, and then we're going to cover that and refrigerate until ready to use it. Next up are pigs and mystery objects in a blanket. I'm going to go with dates. They're similarly brown, kind of craggly, and they're a really nice appetizer when you stuff them with blue cheese. Then normally you'd wrap them in bacon before roasting, but puff pastry is going to be a nice substitute if you want to keep it vegetarian, I guess. So then it's time to bust out the puff, roll it out a little bit on a generously floured worktop, and then we're slicing them into maybe 3-inch long triangles, which we can then roll around our cocktail wieners and blue cheese stuffed dates, starting at the broad side and sealing with a little bit of egg wash if it's not sticking together. Regardless, we are brushing everybody down with a little bit of egg wash for presentation's sake, and I'm going to sprinkle everybody with a little bit of kosher salt, both for flavor and presentation, and then we're going to roast for about 20 minutes at 375 or until browned and puffed. Next up, we got to make ourselves some buckwheat blinis. In a large bowl, I'm combining 75 grams of all-purpose flour, 60 grams of buckwheat flour, 15 grams of sugar, and 5 grams of yeast. I'm just going to whisk those to combine using regular-sized whisk, and then I'm adding 1 cup of whole milk heated to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm milk is going to give our yeast a little bit of a boost, and at this point I'm going to add a little pinch of salt, and then gently whisk until smooth. Now this is basically a yeasted pancake batter, so we need to let it rest for an hour, covered with plastic wrap at room temperature so that yeast can munch down on that sugar. An hour later, and you should see that your batter has doubled in volume, and at this point we're going to add some eggs. We're going to try to crack one, fail miserably, ponder how we managed to make this our full-time job as we fish out all the shell fragments, add a second egg, and then lightly beat them together before pouring directly into the batter. In addition, we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Make sure it's not hot, just melted. We do not want to scramble those eggs, and then we're going to whisk until everybody's homogeneous, smooth, and incorporated, and then pour the whole affair into a large squeeze bottle. This is going to make making tiny pancakes a lot easier. Go ahead and demonstrate it on your countertop for some reason. Perfect. And make sure you don't overfill your bottle or this is going to happen. It's a yeasted batter and it's going to expand. Anyway, once we got that all cleaned up, it's time to make some blinis, which are essentially silver dollar pancakes. And as is the case with all pancakes, the first batch is going to look weird, but as you make batch after batch, you will soon find yourself flipping perfect panners. It's the life lesson universal to all pancakes: never give up. Once the pancakes are done cooking, about a minute on each side, I'm going to place them onto a paper towel just to cool off a bit before we serve. Now onto those little meat roll things. I think you can use pretty much any charcuterie that you want. I'm going with mortadella because it's my favorite. I know it's not French, but sorry. And then I'm going to wrap it with an ultra thin slice of Gruyere. Top it with some tiny little slices of roasted red pepper and skewer with a toothpick. And there you have it. Definitely the easiest appetizer of the bunch and maybe my favorite. Whoops, shoot, where'd it go? Need to make another one. And now onto the tea sandwiches. I'm just arranging some thinly sliced cucumbers, a smear of Neuchâtel cheese, and fresh dill. Then we're slicing off the crusts and cutting into neat little tea sandwiches. Next up, the goat cheese and fig one. I just have some goat cheese here and some fig jam. Simple enough. I think I went a little bit too heavy on the goat cheese there, but now it's time for the assembled platter. Been waiting to do this for a long time. Be our guest. Alright, so let's go through and try all these. First, the little blue cheese dates puff pastry thing. And this is pretty good. It's actually a lot less rich than the bacon version, and I kind of like it. Next up, pig in a blanket. Tale as old as time. And huge shocker, it's really good. Next up, we got us some salmon mousse with a cucumber on a blini. And it's pretty nice. I mean, I wouldn't order it in a restaurant, but I'd certainly eat it. Now we got some fig and goat cheese. And this one's pretty good. I think I went too heavy with the goat cheese, but if you went a little bit more restrained with it, you'd have a very good tea sandwich. Then let's get rid of this inappropriate olive on the cucumber tea sandwich, and this guy is a home run. Just maybe add a little bit of kosher salt during the assembly process. Mortadella roll, winner. Now I don't have to eat this salmon roe to know that I'm going to hate it, but I am a food recreation scientist and I have an obligation. And finally, the gray stuff. Let's do a finger taste like Belle did. Really good. And it can definitely use a more robust cracker, the prettier piping, but you heard it here, folks. The gray stuff, the real gray stuff, is delicious.
Dinner's ready. Trenete al pesto.
Okay.
Ciao, come va ragazzi? E benvenuto al Binging con Babish. E grazie mille a Google Translate. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we are once again playing with fire in the form of a simple, traditional, regional Italian recipe. Trenete al pesto is a simple enough dish, but as usual with Italian cuisine, the devil is in the details. There's Ligurian pesto, the kind of basil and pine nut based pesto with which you're probably most familiar. Plenty of ways for us to get into trouble. And then there's the trenete, which from what I can tell is a little bit wider than linguine, not quite as wide as fettuccine, but shares its flatness. Honestly, all that really matters is that you use pasta of the utmost quality. And then there's some yellow waxy potatoes and green beans. We're gonna peel and small dice the potatoes and cut the green beans down into like 1-inch segments. Then comes the pesto, for which we're gonna follow Pixar's posted recipe. 30 grams of pine nuts, 2 cloves of chopped garlic, and a pinch of coarse salt head into a mortar and pestle, where they get processed into an almost creamy paste. Then we're adding 50 grams or 45 leaves of fresh basil, stems removed. At this point you might start to wish that you had a slightly larger mortar and pestle, but go ahead and soldier on, processing the basil leaves until they just start to break down, at which point we're going to start slowly adding some high quality olive oil. Nothing too spicy or fruity, we want a nice mellow flavor, and we want to add 100 ml of it, one little splash at a time, while we slowly process together the pesto. This is going to help emulsify it into a creamy sauce rather than an oily mess. Another thing that's going to help emulsify it is cheese. About 2 tablespoons each, Parmigiano Reggiano and Pecorino Romano. Once you've added all the oil and the sauce is smooth and creamy with the consistency of, say, a heavy cream, you are ready to rock. Now you might be asking yourself, is it worth setting your forearms on fire to slowly and laboriously coax these ingredients into a sauce, or can you just throw everything in a food processor and blitz? Well, the answer is yeah, this will still yield a mighty fine pesto. But the theory is that by bruising and mashing the basil rather than chopping it, yields a more subtle, delicate, pronounced flavor. For more, we turn, as always, to a blind Jessican taste test, which quickly and resoundingly agreed with Italian tradition. The mortar and pestle version was better, my science is flawless, do not question it. Anyway, it's time to start finally making the damn thing. We're starting by bringing our heavily salted water to the boil, before adding our chopped potatoes, pasta, and green beans all all at the same time. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think it's not enough time for the potatoes and too much time for the green beans, but let's see what happens. We're cooking for about 10 minutes, reserving half a cup of pasta cooking water, straining everything, and then preparing to combine with the pesto, which we're going to do in an entirely separate bowl. It is important not to heat your pesto. About the only heat you want it to experience is the residual heat from the pasta. We're going to add some of our pasta cooking water, a little splash at a time, as we toss everything together until we've achieved the correct consistency, which should be nice and creamy, both from the pesto and the pasta cooking water emulsifying together into a sauce, and from the potatoes, which should break down just a little bit and lend their starch to the situation. Once you've got this properly seasoned with kosher salt, no freshly ground pepper in this recipe apparently, go ahead and plate it up and get ready to savor the pride and joy of Liguria, one of the most delicious and comforting dishes in the world. One that needs no improvement, but I want to see if I can get a little bit closer to the version in the movie. This, I assume, starts not with store-bought basil, but that which has been grown and freshly harvested in one's own backyard. I'm honestly not sure if this is going to make any appreciable difference, but as usual with Italian cuisine, it seems like the further you go for authenticity, the better. So we're grabbing exactly 45 leaves, or I don't know, somewhere around that. And this time we are not measuring anything. We're going to do things the Italian way by using the force. We're losing the stems off our leaves of basil. I got myself some legit, real deal Italian pine nuts, a beautiful head of young, freshly harvested garlic, which has a more subtle, slightly less spicy flavor than its older counterparts. By the way, you might be wondering why my nails are painted now, and the short answer is that I like the way it looks, but the thematically appropriate answer is that I got a little sea monster in me. Next up, we're busting out our real deal Italian Carrara marble mortar and wooden pestle, both the authentic choice and the much easier choice because its weight is going to help cut down on forearm utilization. I'm going to lightly toast my pine nuts by tossing them around in a dry, hot pan and allowing them to cool completely before processing them together with the garlic. And the important thing to keep in mind when processing this stuff together is not to mix or scrape, but rather to pound. This is both going to produce a smoother, more creamy result, and it's an easier, shall we say, more familiar motion. Once we've broken the pine nuts down to a sandy consistency, I'm going to chop up the garlic a little bit, add it to the mortar, and proceed to give it a solid pestlin. Once you've got that broken down to a nice creamy, almost lumpless paste, which should take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, now's the time to start adding the basil leaves, one little handful at a time. Add a little pinch of coarse salt. This is going to help break down the basil leaves by acting like little sort of ball bearings of cellular destruction. Once you've got everything processed down into a pretty smooth paste, now's the time to add the cheese. This time we're using a 2-to-1 ratio of Parmigiano Reggiano to Pecorino Romano. This is going to give us more of a mellow, subtler cheese flavor. Pound and process that into the sauce. We don't want any big old chunks of cheese. Then once you've got that down into a nice, relatively smooth paste, it's time to add the olive oil. This time we're using real Ligurian olive oil. You definitely don't need to special order region-specific olive oil, but once again we're trying to, as accurately as possible, recreate what was enjoyed in that darling little fishing town in the Italian Riviera. Add the oil a little bit at a time, adding cheese to emulsify if the sauce starts to break, until you're met with a thick, creamy Italian pesto. Mine's a little bit chunky, but hey, that's the way I like it. And this time with the pasta, I'm adding stuff in stages. First the potatoes, because they take the longest to cook. After about 5 minutes of cooking, I'm going to add the green beans. Let these guys cook for about 3 minutes before adding the pasta. That's because this time I'm using a quick cooking dried trenette that only takes 2 minutes to cook. If you're using a more traditional dried pasta, go ahead and time things accordingly. Scoop out that pasta water, set it aside, drain the stuff, drop it straight in a large bowl along with our homemade pesto. Toss everything together with a little splash of pasta cooking water, adding more as necessary to emulsify the sauce. Take care not to over toss so you don't break down the potatoes too much. Pile it high in a bowl, be sure to top with plenty of green beans and potatoes. And this time we're not going to forget to garnish with a little bit of fresh basil. And there you have it, trenette al pesto, made with real Italian, regional, local ingredients. Was it worth the extra effort? And the answer is kinda, yeah. There's a lot more subtlety and sweetness to the olive oil and the young garlic. The freshly picked basil has a little bit more pronounced flavor. But if you really want to be authentic, you gotta eat this like a sea monster. Even if people ask you, what's wrong with you, stupido? Just laugh as you drive away on your Vespa.
Have some more.
No, gracias.
I asked if you would like more tamales.
See?
That's what I thought you said.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the tamales from Coco. Once you've got a solid 12 hours set aside to construct your tamales, we need to start by soaking the corn husks. We want to soak these in room temperature water for at least 3 hours, if not overnight. Just separate the husks a little bit and place them in a large pot. Make sure that they, that they fit. Uh-oh. Time to break out the big guns, or pots. big pots. While those guys are soaking, we can get started on some of our fillings. I apologize for dressing down, but this was late the night before, and that's actually one of the beauties of this recipe is that you can start a day, 2 days before, and stop at virtually any point and pick it up the next day. You might recognize what I'm doing here. I'm making a pretty basic chili paste out of a couple different kinds of dried chilies, in this case guajillo and pasilla chilies, and I'm also going to add a few cloves of garlic, a few quartered tomatillos, a good squeeze of lime, a good squeeze of orange juice, a couple heaping teaspoons of cumin, preferably freshly toasted and ground in a spice grinder, but it's late and I'm not trying to wake up Rashid, a good pinch of Mexican oregano, some salt, freshly ground pepper, and blitz into a smooth paste, pretty close to what we use in our al pastor pork. Open this guy up, take in the beautiful smells, and set aside to cool completely while we deal with our pork. We're going to go with a small pork shoulder for this recipe. Make sure that you are working with appetizing pork, very important. Clean the meat from the bone, cut off the skin, and cut into about 2-inch cubes, which we're then going to place in a large Ziploc bag and cover in our marinade. Give it a little massage and fridge this for at least 3 hours. Or you could come to the shocking realization that you could just let the pork marinate in your cooking vessel. So I'm going to place this in a foil-lined casserole that I'm going to cover and fridge for at least 3 hours, or in my case, overnight. The next day, and I'm all gussied up for dinner, and I'm going to get started on making our tamale dough. I am weighing out 560 grams of masa harina, which is a kind of instant corn flour, and adding to it 700 milliliters of very hot water, giving it a good mix with a wooden spoon until a crumbly kind of dough forms. Set this aside and let it rest for 15 minutes while we start working with our lard. A lot of people freak out at the idea of lard, but it's actually not that bad for you, and it's what they use in OG legit shit tamales. And I'd imagine that's what the abuela in Coco is making. So we are whipping 375 grams of lard for 2 minutes in a stand mixer until it is light and fluffy, at which point we're going to add a half teaspoon of kosher salt and a teaspoon and a half of baking powder, mixing to combine before slowly adding our soaked masa. Add maybe a third of it at a time, beating and scraping down the sides of the bowl before adding the rest, beating again until a cohesive mass forms, into which we are going to slowly stream 1 cup of warm chicken stock, beating one more time to combine thoroughly and create our dough. Now this is a much thicker, fluffier dough than most tamale doughs, but they say if you drop a piece in cold water and it floats, you're good to go. And I think that all the air that we beat in there is going to make for a lighter, less dense tamale. Anyway, speaking of which, it's time to talk fillings. We braised our pork for 3 hours at 275 degrees Fahrenheit, shredded it, and added back a little bit of the marinade. I'm also going to do some roasted poblano and cheese tamales. I roasted some poblanos straight over the flame on my stovetop, wrap them in foil, let them steam and soften up before we peel them. Now, at long last, it's tamale time. We're going to start by peeling off the carbonized exterior of our poblano peppers and cutting them into strips. I could just eat a giant bowl of these alone, but we're going to add some cheese. Oaxaca cheese, which is kind of like a Mexican mozzarella. We're going to tear the cheese into similarly sized pieces and start spackling our corn husks with tamale dough. Just spread a nice, relatively thin, even layer over the top half of the corn husk, leaving a 2-inch border on each side. Stuff with your fillings and roll together so that the two sides of the tamale dough meet in the middle. Fold up the tapered end of the corn husk, and using 2 strips of corn husks that we're going to tie together in the center, we're going to make a little tie for tamale security. Snip the long strands for a prettier presentation, and look at that perfect little package. It takes a bit of practice, but you find yourself getting into a rhythm, and it becomes second nature after your 4th or 5th try. Repeat with some of the pork and place them all standing up in the steam basket of a large pot. Cover the tops of the tamales with a couple stray corn husks. This is going to help concentrate the heat in the steamer. Fill with an inch or 2 of water, cover, and steam for about 90 minutes. If you find that the interior of your tamales are sticking to the corn husks, just steam them for another 15 minutes. Stack them up on a large plate so they stay warm, but let them rest for 30 minutes before digging in. This is going to help them firm up a little bit. And now, a solid 8 hours of work later, it's time to finally dig in. I'm going to have one of each. We've got poblano and cheese and pork stuffed tamales, but you could really put anything you want in here. Anything you would put in a taco, I bet would work in here. I'm going to serve them with a slightly spicy, sharp, acidic salsa verde. You can check out my I Love You Man Tacos episode for how to make that. And guess what, guys? We've got another Clean Plate Award winner. These things can be prepped in advance, they freeze great after you've cooked them, and they're perfect for your Oscar viewing party, that is, if you don't eat them all yourself.
You are perfect. Just like this. You're just as special as anyone else in this family.
You just healed my hand with an arepa con queso.
I healed your hand with my love for my daughter.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week I need a quick and easy one, so we're making arepas con queso from Encanto. Now, to make arepas, you need a special kind of corn flour, which for some reason when I was shooting this, I thought it'd be a good idea to illustrate. I don't know why you need to know that. We're using masarepa, a kind of pre-cooked corn flour readily available at your local grocer. First up, in a large bowl, we are combining 10 ounces of warm water, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 10 ounces of masarepa, adding in stages and mixing constantly with your hands to make sure that it doesn't end up dry or lumpy. Once you got yourself a relatively smooth paste, we're going to let that sit for 10 minutes, after which time the corn flour should have hydrated and it'll look exactly the same. But now we can start paying attention to its texture. We want it to be able to hold together but still be a little crumbly. If that's where it's at, we're going to add 1 ounce of soft unsalted butter and 2.5 ounces of shredded Oaxaca or low moisture mozzarella cheese. Then we got to knead this guy together for about 5 minutes. Since there is no gluten to develop in corn flour, I don't really know exactly what's happening here, but you should find that the dough comes together into one smeary, cohesive, not too sticky ball. Adjust with more water or masarepa as necessary until you end up with a texture that looks like this. And now it's time to form it into little corn burgers. Using thoroughly moistened hands, we're going to divide this dough into 8 equal pieces, or 6 if you want larger arepas. You can arrange these on parchment paper or just throw them down on the griddle. This is my first time making arepas, so I'm being way too fastidious and precious about it. For some reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to lay them out on parchment paper that I would then cut for easy transport over the skillet, none of which is necessary. Over on the stovetop, we've got a cast iron skillet that's been preheated over medium to medium-low heat, which we're going to plop our arepas onto after we've brushed it down with melted butter or the fat of your choice. Cooking for about 5 to 7 minutes per side over medium-low heat. These things are thick and we want them to cook through and develop a nice golden brown crust. Once cooked, scoop them off and then it's time to slice and stuff. We're going to cut the arepas about 2/3 of the way open. Once again, this is my first time doing this. Look at that little guy just exploring his universe. And once split open, we're going to stuff them with cheese. Once again, you can use Oaxaca. I'm just using slices of low moisture mozzarella. Then these guys are headed back onto the skillet where they're going to cook for 2 to 3 minutes per side over medium-low heat until the cheese is melted through, and all you want to do in this world is eat them. Plate them up and serve them just as they are, maybe with a little sprinkle of kosher salt. Now you don't have to slowly tear them in half, but I'm a YouTuber, it's in my contract. Then all there's left to do is dig into your delicious, crunchy, cheesy, corny snack. There's only one word for it: encantadora.
Get your clothes on, get ready, got breakfast for you. Look, you get porridge, and it's happy to see you. Hey, get out of there.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the congee from Mulan, a simple porridge made from that most abundant of foodstuffs, rice. I'm sorry for the relatively simple recipe this week, but despite having a lot of fun meeting you guys at VidCon, it pushed my production schedule into the day before you're watching this very episode. But I still think we can have fun with this recipe. Let's start by making a bare bones congee, that is a ratio of 6:1 cups water to rice. So that's 6 cups of water to 1 cup of long grain jasmine rice that we're going to bring to a bare simmer, partially cover and cook for 1 1/2 hours until the rice has totally broken down and become a thick, creamy porridge. Now during the cooking process, you may notice that the water evaporates too quickly. If so, add more water a cup at a time until the desired consistency is reached. It should look like, well, porridge. And while its viscosity is entirely up to your preference, do not eat this without seasoning heavily with salt and pepper. Now it's time for the smiley face bacon, which I attempted to cook in the shape of a smile, but as you can see, they just sort of naturally straighten out as they cook. But when you take them off the heat and let them cool on a paper towel, this is when you can shape them to the appropriate specification. And while the bacon drains, it's time to address eggs. Now Mushu is a very small guy and he's serving the congee in a very small bowl, so I think that this means quail's eggs, which have a very thick inner membrane so they can be a little tricky to crack. Just pierce them with a knife and carefully crack them open into your awaiting skillet filled with bacon fat. Simply cook them sunny side up until the whites are set and the yolks are still runny, and then it's time for presentation. Let's start with a generous helping of our congee. In this, its most basic form, perhaps the blandest foodstuff known to man, so it's a good thing we've got a few bacon fat fried eggs and some bacon. And look at that, your breakfast is smiling at you. I have to admit, I'm charmed. In fact, this little guy is just so cute, I don't know if I can bring myself to eat him. No, I'm gonna eat him. I'm gonna eat his old face. And while of course the bacon and eggs are nice, once they're done, this is a really, really bland porridge, so we need to go back to our building blocks to make something a little bit more exciting. And we're also going to see if we can drastically cut down on our cook time by employing the use of a pressure cooker. We're going to keep the same liquid to rice ratio of 6:1, but this time we're going to use homemade chicken stock. Alternately, you could just add some chicken parts to the pressure cooker as it cooks, and then you get some nice shredded chicken in the end. I'm also going to add a 1-inch knob of ginger, finely chopped, and 1 clove of garlic finely chopped. As usual, do not season until the end of cooking. Put this guy on high pressure for 30 minutes, quick releasing the pressure and generously seasoning with salt and pepper. And now it's time to start focusing on additional congee accoutrement. What? Sorry, we're frying some thinly sliced garlic and thinly sliced shallots in a little bit of vegetable oil and draining on paper towels, slicing up some green onion, and bringing a couple other new friends to the party. As you can see, the chicken stock made for a darker brown congee. If you don't want to do that, add the chicken parts as I described earlier, or you can make a lighter colored stock by not frying your chicken parts before simmering. We got a bigger bowl, and that calls for bigger eggs. I've got 2 sunny side up eggs here, and we need a bigger bacon smile, and since they don't really make bacon much bigger, let's just double up. And now how about some sauteed shiitake mushroom eyebrows? That's both cute and delicious. But before he gets too cute, let's give him a little scallion beard, which to me sounds like it could be a pirate antagonist from Candyland or something. Then how about some black sesame seed pupils? That's sure to make it more realistic and a little creepy. Some pickled ginger ears for their anatomical correctness, and some curly, crispy shallot hair. What else does this guy need? How about a nose? Let's do a crispy fried garlic chip nose, since that's probably the smelliest ingredient. And then peanut, I don't know, the guy's got peanuts in his beard, a few dots of delicious sriracha acne, and that's just about as many facial features as we can give this thing. I gotta admit, he's pretty cute, and I have much higher hopes for how good he's gonna taste. I know that Mushu uses chopsticks in the movie, but I'm gonna opt for a spoon, because congee is not very chopstick friendly, and as predicted, this is pretty friggin' delicious. It's a flavorful and anthropomorphic breakfast that I can really get behind, and he would definitely join the Clean Plate Club if he wasn't so darn cute. I think I'm gonna call him John Bun Congee. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at Remy's soup from Ratatouille, which by most metrics appears to be a potato leek soup. I think Pixar took some culinary liberties in depicting the recipe, so we're going to do what we do best here on Babish, make a super basic version, and then, like Remy, see in what ways we can improve it. First, we have to trim and clean our leeks. That means removing the roots and cutting the leek at the point where the white begins to turn to green. Then the white segments are being halved lengthwise and thoroughly washed, leeks being notorious for hiding dirt in every crevice. Submerge in some water and flip through the layers like a book to make sure that no errant granules of earth are left behind. Then we want to pat these guys dry before beginning to slice into very, very thin slices. Leeks are of a tough and fibrous sort, and if you're not pureeing your soup, can turn into little edible zip ties. I'm doing 2 recipes, so I'm going to divvy these up in 2. It's about 3 leeks per recipe, and starting work on the other half of this self-titled album, the potato. 3 large russets peeled and chopped into half-inch pieces. Keep these guys covered in cold water to wash off excess starch and prevent oxidation. Everybody's prepped, so it's time to cook, and we're starting with the very simplest iteration of potato leek soup, vichyssoise. Melting 2 tablespoons of butter in a wide, high-walled skillet. Wait for the foaming to subside, and then we're adding our 3 leeks worth of thinly sliced bottoms. Sauteing over medium heat for 3 to 5 minutes until sweated and beginning to soften. Hopefully you got a little bit of brown stuff forming on the bottom of the pot, which we're going to deglaze with 1 liter or 4.22 cups of vegetable stock. Bring this guy up to a simmer before adding our potatoes. 3 russets worth, between 5 to 600 grams. Then here they shall cook with the stock and leeks for about 15 minutes until completely softened and effortlessly pierced by a paring knife or human teeth. Now to be more movie accurate, you could serve the soup like this, rustic with whole chunks of vegetables in it, but to make it a vichyssoise, it must be pureed. You could do this in the pan, but that's not very smart, Andy. Let's put it in a thing. Something tall, narrow, and heat-proof. Season to taste with kosher salt and make sure that everything is entirely smooth. Then finally, we're adding a half cup of heavy cream. Now you might be wondering why I'm using a whisk instead of the hand blender to incorporate the cream, and I'm wondering that too. Guess you'd have to ask last week, Andy, and I don't get that guy. Be sure to taste for seasoning, and the soup can be served hot, but is traditionally served cold. So cover it up tight and fridge it for at least 4 hours or until completely not hot. Pour it into a soup-style bowl, garnish with a little bit more heavy cream. Not my best work, but certainly not my worst. Garnish with chives for color and chiveness, and season with a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. And there you have it, a classic vichyssoise. Reportedly Julia Child's very favorite soup. So how's it taste? And the answer is very, very good, but very, very simple. As though licked off the page of the definition tin of potato leek soup. Certainly not as bad as linguini's, but what would Remy the rat do? First up, I think make good use of these leek greens in a homemade vegetable stock, cutting all these guys in half and very extremely thoroughly washing them, as the greens tend to be even dirtier. I'm going to chop these up into some slightly more manageable pieces so they fit in my pan, and give them plenty of company in the form of several essential aromatics. Of course, there's celery, and this is a great opportunity to put those celery leaves to good use. Make sure you wash those too before you add them to the pan. And carrots are a given, but I like to also add a parsnip's worth of parsnip to my stock. I've found that it adds a distinct sweetness, and despite all the oniony leeks in there, we're going to add 1 onion quartered, some fresh thyme, fresh parsley, a little bit of fresh rosemary, and a hefty fingerful of bay leaves, something I definitely saw Remy throw in the pot. I'm also going to add some halved garlic cloves. I got these giant ones, covering everybody with cold water, popping a lid on top, and bringing to a simmer. Then partially covering and holding for at least 2 hours up to 4. After that point, there's not much more flavor to be gotten out of these vegetables. You could snack on them if you want, but they're really better as compost. Simply strain out the solids, and we're only going to need a liter of this vegetable stock, so make sure you freeze and save the rest. Next up, another ingredient added by Remy, garlic. But instead of just throwing whole cloves in the pot, we're going to cut the tops off 2 heads of garlic, wrap in a little bit of foil, drizzle with olive oil, sprinkle with salt, twist the aluminum foil tightly around the garlic, and place in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for 35 to 45 minutes, until you can plainly smell the greatness lying in wait. Retrieve from the oven without oven gloves so you look like a tough guy, unwrap, and behold. Now you might be thinking 2 whole heads of garlic for soup is a lot, and you're right. That's why one of these is just a snack for me. Over on the stovetop, we're starting out the same way, but I want to try and caramelize these leeks. You can't really caramelize leeks the same way that you can onions, but I'm just going to keep them moving low and slow for as long as I possibly can until they've got some good color. Next door, you might be wondering why I'm bringing my potatoes to a boil in plain salted water instead of stock. Once again, I'm going to ask you to direct all your questions to last week Andy. I seriously don't know what he's doing sometimes. It's like he has zero hindsight. Once the leeks can't caramelize no more without browning, I'm deglazing with 1 cup of dry white wine, simmering over medium heat until the onions are soft and jammy and the wine has all but evaporated. This should also leave some delicious fond on the bottom of the pot that we can then deglaze with our homemade vegetable stock. Make sure you scrape up all that good stuff, adding 1 liter of stock to the pot. Then once the potatoes are nice and tender, I'm going to drain them. Then I'm going to start by only adding half the potatoes to the soup. That's because I'm going to use some to thicken the soup and the rest to give it a chunky texture like in the movie. Squeeze that head of roasted garlic in there and simmer for about 5 minutes just to let the flavors get to know each other. But they're all about to get very well acquainted in the blender, which I'm going to blitz for about 30 seconds on max speed to ensure that all the vegetables are liquefied. Now here's where you need to start making adjustments. This soup is way too thin, so I'm going to pour some of it out and add a scoop or 2 more potatoes to thicken its body before it thickens my body, and keep adjusting as necessary, making sure to season to taste with kosher salt. And I'm going to add a half teaspoon of white pepper so we don't end up with speckly soup. Now that it's nice and thick but not gunky, I'm going to return it to the pan. Then, like a rat in a fine French kitchen, start adding stuff. First the remaining potatoes so that the soup has a nice chunky vibe to it, an entire cup or 236 milliliters of heavy cream, and for a little added tang, I'm going to add 2 ounces or about 50 grams of quark, which if you can't find, you could just use gournay or cream cheese. Scoop into an awaiting pre-warmed bowl if you want to be a pro about it. Garnish once again with chives and freshly ground black pepper. And since there's so much cream already in the soup, I'm going to drizzle it with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, since you can see some beads of fat dancing across the surface of the soup in the movie. But has it taste? And the answer is really good. It's everything that makes the vichyssoise great with added flavor and complexity. I think I would have loved a little freshly grated nutmeg over top, but once again, last week Andy dropped the ball. Still an unquestionable member of the Clean Plate / Bowl Club. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of whatever the show's called, where I'm ranking your strangest proclivities. We recently put out a call for your strangest, most bizarre, most depraved recipes that you can't believe you love, and we got thousands of responses. So, Kendall's been kind enough to make 25 of them for me, and I'm gonna try them, rank them, and see just what the hell's going on in that head of yours. Let's get started. This episode is sponsored by Trainwell. Trainwell combines the personalization and accountability of an in-person personal trainer with the flexibility of technology. After a call with Nate, my virtual trainer, he designed custom workouts to fit my goals and schedule. With the Trainwell app, you can work out anytime, anywhere. Exercising consistently can be challenging with a schedule like mine, but with Trainwell, I have the flexibility to work out when it works out for me. The first 100 people to sign up with my Trainwell link get 14 days free, plus $25 off their first month. The link is in the video description.
Okay.
For your consideration, this is teriyaki spam, submitted by the Media Judge 1.
Teriyaki spam doesn't sound half bad.
I wanted to start you off with one that I think is going to be tasty.
Okay, so what's in it? Or should I just eat it?
Just eat it,
Okay.
eat it.
All right.
You'll know.
Okay, happy breakfast. That's a damn fine breakfast wrap is what that is. I never had spam in a egg and cheese, presumably? Wrap?
No,
or just
no
egg?
cheese. It's just egg, pepper, and onion, and the spam has been marinated in soy sauce, mirin, and garlic.
I love it. It's perfect. I'm not a huge teriyaki fan, not a huge spam fan, big breakfast burritos fan. The three have come together into something completely palatable, downright tasty even. This is great. This is great. I love this. I love this.
I wouldn't eat more. You have many more to come. No.
Well, we're off to an extremely promising start. This is downright tasty. If I were to rank spam as a food product, I'd give it a 4. You've nudged it up into the 8 territories. We got an 8 on our hands here, folks. I do like it, Sam I am. I do like teriyaki spam. I do like it in a burrito. I do like it. Nothing rhymes with burrito. Nothing. Not even Dr. Seuss can rhyme with burrito. What'd you say? With a mojito. F***. Okay.
We've got mac and beans submitted by Dragon Puff. It's a box of regular Kraft mac and cheese dinner combined with a can of pork and beans.
I mean, that doesn't sound half bad. Mac and cheese, pork and beans. No. It's as though the flavors somehow cancel each other out. It's like, this doesn't taste like mac and cheese, nor does it taste like pork and beans. I think maybe barbecue baked beans might work better, but I also have no desire to have beans in my pasta. It's just not doing it for me. Because this is not bad, it's not offensive, but it's also not good, I think that gives it a 5.
This is the PBJ&P submitted by Ben's Brick Designs.
What, pray tell, is the extra P?
It's a PB&J sandwich, but you have a third piece of bread, and you put dill pickle slices and potato chips.
Here we go. It begins. Fun's over, people. So it's a triple-decker PB&J, wantonly mashing together sweet and savory like a child on the wrong ADD medication. Woo! It's just like this. You taste pickles and chips, and then you taste PB&J, and then you taste pickles, and then you taste PB&J. It's like I'm eating 2 sandwiches like this, like back and forth. I'm going to have to rate this because it's not just food. It's a little worse than that. I'll be very, very diplomatic and give it a 4.
May I present to you Depression Kimchi Pickle Toast, submitted by Blars. So it's a grilled cheese, but open face, topped with pickles, kimchi, and drizzled with ketchup and spicy mayonnaise.
Sounds pretty lit, if you ask me. Is that what they say?
They say.
Oh my God. Okay, Blars, this one's for you. I need something with a little bit of everything. Here we go, right. Ooh.
He added that they specified that this is their ticket to happiness.
Well, I'm very happy that it makes you happy. It's not doing it for me. If it were just kimchi, cheese, and spicy mayo, I'd probably be giving it like an 8. But with the pickles and the ketchup, it's really not doing it for me, but it's not disgusting, but it's also not something I want to keep eating, so I think it's a 4. Cure your depression however you like, with or without ketchup. It's not for me to judge, even though I am sitting here judging it. Anyway, I'm happy that this cures your depression. If you do have depression, try to seek out professional help, not necessarily just funky toasts.
This is the pasta omelet, submitted by Webbs. So you take leftover pasta. The submitter likes puttanesca, but as you do not like puttanesca, I went with penne alla vodka.
Oh.
Then you soak it in seasoned eggs overnight in the refrigerator.
Soak it in seasoned eggs.
And then you heat it up in a frying pan and cook it like a Spanish tortilla.
Thank you, Webbs. I think this is actually gonna be pretty chill. I don't mind it. I'm not crazy about it. I wish it could be crispier, but I know that's not possible. We're talking about eggs here. You can't get eggs crispy, and if you did, they'd be gross. I almost wish we did pudenashka because that's what they suggested.
No,
Just because now
I was
I
gonna
feel-
make it without.
But as it is, I think I gotta give it a 5. I don't want any more of it. I don't want any less of it. I am the same for having had tried it. Solid 5.
This is Poor Man's Pad Thai, as submitted by X Katybug. It is a toasted slice of white bread topped with peanut butter, chili crisp, and optionally tagine.
I mean, it's got the pad thai flavors in there, kinda. Where's the tamarind? Where's the shrimp? But no, I mean, that's why we call it poor man's pad thai. Let's try it out. I like it. It wants for something. An acid actually would be great. Maybe like a squeeze of lime or something, just like pad thai. Whoa, why is it red? Why is there red on it? What's happening? What is
Don't worry
this?
about that. Don't worry about that.
Just like real pad thai, little squeeze of lime. Let's see what happens. I'm impressed. With a squeeze of lime, I'm still reticent to give it an 8. It bumped it up to like a 7.5. But as is, 7. Like that's a really serviceable, enjoyable snack. It does deliver on some of the flavors. Not quite, but like is very interesting in its own right. That's a 7. I like it. Let's take a look.
This is Gator Wine, submitted by Goats Nowhere.
Gator wine?
Guess what it is?
Gatorade and wine?
Yes. It's specifically equal parts light blue Gatorade.
Light blue Gatorade?
And red wine, cheap, under $12, which was difficult to find, to be honest.
Wine prices. That's because Barefoot used to be able to, they paid you to take it, and it's cold.
I froze the glass.
Well, I mean, I should do this proper. I'm trying to swirl it to get them legs. What kind of legs we working with here? No discernible legs, just varicose veins. Well, this is just exactly what I need right now. Some electrolytes, some booze. You could have it while you're working out. You could have it while you're giving birth. You could have it at a funeral. You could do belly shots of it. This is the most versatile drink I've ever heard of. Here we go. It's not like anything I've ever tasted, ever. Tastes of, there's maybe cherries, leather, and like snozberries on the nose. I don't know what to do about it, because if I'm being honest, I'd rather drink this than Barefoot or Yellowtail. Does that make me a snob, or does that make me cool? I don't know. I drink that on the rocks. The more I'm drinking it, the more I like it. It's kind of what it's giving, is like almost a sangria vibe, because you added this fruit juice, for lack of a better word, to wine. So it's this kind of wine cocktail vibe. And I definitely don't like it as much as sangria, but I don't like it any less than that. I kind of give it a 6. I like it. I kind of very disgusting, perverse way I like it. So I'm gonna keep it right here with me for the rest of the episode. I'm just gonna be drinking it.
This is Cheez-Its and applesauce, as presented by Not Available.
So this is anonymously submitted. I wonder why. I'm gonna start by eating it kind of like a chip, I guess.
Good.
Say good?
Yeah.
You sound like a Sith or something. Good. Yes. Use it like a chip. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've been pranked, because this is done. I taste Cheez-It, then I taste applesauce, then I taste Cheez-It, and I taste applesauce. These flavors are incompatible. This is gross. I'm gonna give it a 2. Really don't like it. And I love both these things. I love applesauce, I love Cheez-Its. Not meant to be together. Sorry, question mark? Why do I feel bad?
Well, if you thought the last one was a prank, you might think the same about this one. This is the Oreo Witch, as submitted by Shanley and Jello.
Thanks, Stanley.
Bread bun on the bottom, a small amount of jelly, grape preferably on it. Slice of ham, slice of cheese on top of jelly. 4 Oreos centered on the sandwich, 1 bread bun on top. It tastes surprisingly good, in parentheses, I'm sorry.
You guys are dicks. I hope that they didn't actually mean this and I'm like now being so mean about their favorite snack, but also this is not, you're unwell. Not bad. I'll tell you why it doesn't taste bad. Because all I taste, I don't taste ham or cheese. I just taste Oreos and jelly, which ain't bad. How do I rate it? Because that's all I tasted and it tasted good. You're right, Shane Leangelo. This doesn't taste bad because you can't taste the ham and cheese. You just taste Oreos and jam. I guess you're getting a little protein in there. If anything, that's more points. I don't know. I don't know what's what anymore. I've lost track of reality. I'm gonna give it a 6. I'm gonna give it a 6. I have to give it a 6 because it doesn't taste bad. And my career's over now. I don't want to have another bite. Does that mean that it gets less then? Okay, you know what? No, hold on. Give me that empty plate back. Here, it's still here. We threw it away, but just pretend it's here. The fact is that, like, looking at it, and with even baseline knowledge of what it is, I don't want to have another bite. So I feel like that has to knock it down. I don't care what it tastes like, it has to knock it down. You can't just judge food on taste alone. You eat with your eyes first, and I saw it. From sheer, like, admiration for being able to take that and make it not taste like hell, 4. 4. And you're lucky you're getting 4. What have we got here?
Velveeta and marshmallow s'mores. Submitted by Joey T_stuff. Sounds awful, I know, but trust me, exclamation point. Place a Ritz cracker on a sheet tray, topped with a 1/4-inch slice of Velveeta. Marshmallow, broil until broiled.
Okay.
And then top with another Ritz cracker.
I've been surprised by weirder than this thus far. So, Velveeta, marshmallow, and cracker. No, no, no. You don't get to start sweet and end savory. It doesn't go that way. Oh, no. And the Velveeta, and now I taste Velveeta and marshmallow at the same time, and it is not pretty. I don't care for this at all. It's not as horrible as I was expecting it to be, but it's also not very good at all. I'm gonna give these a 3. 3 for thee, but not for me. Not when I've got my gator one.
These are salt chocolate grapes, as suggested by Dusty Lie Can Rock.
Well, they're terribly charming to look at. Oh wait, they're frozen
Nope.
grapes? They're just grapes. And salted, no less.
Salted, which is a key component as it is in the title of the dish. Be careful as the sticks are pokey. Very pokey.
Ooh, you're right, they're very.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lee Mulligan. They're gonna put a lot of shit on my face.
Today, we're giving this comedian a total transformation.
Yeah, that was genuine. That was a genuine trip.
They have no idea who or what they're about to become.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Once they see themselves in the mirror, they'll have to make up a character on the spot and then sit down with me for an improvised interview. This is very important, people.
In the wardrobe room, there were cooling packs, and right now, the effect that they're having on my body is nothing short of a miracle.
3, 2, 1.
You can't tell where the beard ends and the clothes begins.
Look at me. Wow. What I love about this dude is he is so warm, but then sandals. Wow. This guy's great.
I have been living in the taiga for years, hunting only adult bear.
So my supplement regime. Oh, look like a true caveman influencer. We've seen what a wheel can do. I am a podcaster. We have cars that we run with our feet, right? But what if there was a big car that went from the quarry to the ribs place as a scheduled stop? So like Silicon Valley, Granite Valley, Carbon Valley. We have a ping pong table. It's made out of granite. It's in the break room. Have as many ribs as you want. We're a family here. What do I need to do to get you into a brontosaurus today?
Good afternoon, class.
My name is Beauregard St. Vincent, and I shall be your theater instructor. And then the other one is, I'm from the woods. And that's just where we started.
This is scalding. I burned my tongue, and now I can't taste anything. We all have a story to tell. And sometimes that story needs to be shared with the world. Good evening. I'm Vic Michaelis, back with another edition of Very Important People. Please introduce yourself. Okay, and... Sorry, can you What is your name? Okay, it's fine. Hi, it's okay. Hey, 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 hey. No, it's fine. It's okay. Okay, hey, hi. What's this? Oh, what's this? Hi, hi. Oh, yeah.
Soup?
Yeah, there you go. What's your name? What's your name? Hi.
I'm from the woods.
You're from the woods. Okay, wonderful. Look at that. How fun. Good friend. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we're not gonna hurt you. There we go. Look at that. Oh, how fun. So.
I need to get back
to
the cottage. I fell asleep. I fell asleep in a glade.
Okay, so I was told that we had a sort of eccentric physicist that was coming on the show today.
Christmas?
Physicist.
Physicist. Exactly.
Are you a physicist, sir?
We don't have time. You're dead.
I'm dead?
You're as good as dead.
I don't like hearing that from you, sir. Listen, can we get your name, maybe? Maybe we can help you out. It sounds like there's been some mass confusion and someone's getting fired, right? So why don't we go ahead, let's get your name and why don't we get you out of here? How about that?
Ogbert.
Ogbert. Is that your last name?
The following video was recorded by Francisco, a man who works at the Gallup Indian Medical Center, a place known for late-night emergencies, long quiet hallways, and the kind of unexplained noises staff usually try not to think too much about. Things fall on their own sometimes. Doors close when no one's around, and workers have shared stories of hearing footsteps long after the wards are empty. and on this particular evening, Francisco had his own experience. He was the only person left at work around 5 p.m. when he started hearing things.
And I'm just recording because I don't know who it could be or anyone's here. It's just me here. It's like 5 o'clock. And nobody's here, and I'm the only one here ready to leave. Hello?
To check, but the door is locked. Obviously it's an Airbnb, so they lock a lot of the doors up, but so yeah, I don't think that it's what's on the stairs like what I initially thought. I think it's what's below. I want to find out at this point.
Now that they'd found a locked basement under the stairs, things finally began to add up. Sydney couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening on those steps, whatever her dog kept sensing and pacing around, was connected to whatever was sealed behind that door. It was almost like the dog was reacting to something moving underneath them, something it could feel but they couldn't. Curious and honestly a little desperate for answers, Sydney slid her phone under the door to see what might be inside.
Top 10 ghosts caught on camera. Project Paranormal. Paranormal investigator Dave Jones from the YouTube channel Project Paranormal sent me an email about a video he received from a friend. Dave's friend says that he's been experiencing disturbing paranormal activity in his historic home in Michigan, a house that was once used as a funeral home. The man says that at all hours of the day and night he hears the sounds of conversations, footsteps, and even the front door opening and closing on its own. In an attempt to capture some kind of evidence of the strange events, he sets up a camera in his living room and leaves to go to work. When he comes home and checks his footage, he is shocked by what he finds. A creepy shadow-like figure can be seen walking through the living room and behind the couch. Dave and his friend believe the apparition to be a visible manifestation of the spirit that haunts the home. Whatever it is, it doesn't appear to be a normal shadow, because as you can see, it clearly passes behind the couch. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. You can watch this video over on Dave's YouTube channel, Project Paranormal. Hey, get out of here, man. Marissa Whitehead and her boyfriend are spending the night at the in Saskatchewan, Canada. Family ties.
Ghosts drifting through houses, glowing shapes hovering in streets, headless figures wandering at night. Every clip captures a presence that shouldn't exist. So watch closely, because this is what we call the stuff of nightmares.
Whoa! What the? Did you see that? Hold on.
This homeowner was resting near his pool when he noticed a strange figure. That's when the nightmare began. Near the pool, a woman was sitting absolutely still. Her skin was pale, her face lifeless, and her eyes were locked directly on the camera. She didn't look human at all. He knew she hadn't been there that night, yet there she was, calmly staring back at him. The realization hit hard. He hadn't just hosted his friends, but a ghost too. Nothing bad happened that night, but the thought that it might return with darker intentions was enough to haunt him long after the party ended. Racing spirits. In 2024, a security camera on a quiet farm captured strange lights racing across the sky. They weren't shooting stars. They appeared out of nowhere, flashed at incredible speed, and vanished like they were never there. The farmer had no explanation. It didn't feel natural at all. Days later, the truth began to surface. A neighbor revealed that a surveillance video from their newborn's room when pure fear hit them. Outside the window, a witch-like woman stood perfectly still, staring straight at the baby. Her face looked cold, as if she carried a dark plan. Thankfully, nothing happened, but the fear never left the parent.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, they would be saying the prayers. No way they saved it to the. Is it even in here? Are you still down to watch videos? We've been at it for a while. Okay, just making sure.
During the summer, a man and his family relocated to a new home. Initially, everything seemed normal as they settled in, with no indication of what was to come. However, after a few weeks, they began to notice unusual occurrences, particularly at night. One evening, when only 2 family members were home, they decided to pass the time by playing some games. Suddenly, they were startled by unsettling sounds echoing through the house.
Dude, you hear that, right? Yeah. Alright guys, I have to start recording. We just moved in here last summer, and we keep hearing these things. Dude, you hear that, right? Yeah. Don't tell me it's just me. That's ridiculous, man. I don't know.
They first heard a series of knocks that seemed to come from different parts of the home. Upon further inspection, they discovered that the kitchen cabinets had mysteriously opened on their own. Despite thoroughly searching every room, they found no trace of anyone else.
The ones from like the teens, they're good. Ugh, that one was gross. The lady? The lady? I hate her fucking face.
It's been a long year since I've done a Ring cameras video, and as it turns out, people are still creeps and a lot of new videos have surfaced, so let's look at some of them. This first video is a very real and grisly reminder that danger can be following you anywhere at any time, even to your front door. And it can be a lesson, especially for women, to be alert of your surroundings, especially before opening your front door. As you just saw, a mother holding her infant daughter unknowingly leads a man to her front door and was mere seconds away from the man's step on the porch, and the one in front immediately tries to open the door. Some people think the men looked genuinely confused and may have had the wrong house. However, the short window of time between the girl entering the house and the men stepping on the porch would have definitely allowed them to see the girl. You'd think anyone who just tries to open the door to a house surely must know they have the right house, or at the very least, know who lives in the house. It could also be argued that when the man turns to his friend behind him, he's making mention of the camera, and so he pretends to think he has the right house by sticking around and knocking, despite the obvious screams from the girl inside as she notices the men at the door. It seems they only run off after the girl starts screaming, "We're calling the police." So unlike the first video, there's no 100% proof of whether these guys had bad intentions or not. Whether they were trying to grab the girl, or if they genuinely had the wrong house is up for debate, as there's no further info on this video. If it is the second one, still, everything about the men's actions was sketchy. In this video, on the other hand, what's going on couldn't be more clear. In the early morning hours on October 16th in Kent, Washington, a couple's seen returning home. The husband is seen unlocking the door, and seconds later, as the man's wife follows behind, she turns her head to a gun-wielding suspect chasing behind her. She acts quickly and runs inside, locking the front door. The suspect then spots the Ring camera and hits it repeatedly with his gun, effectively breaking the device. It's at this time that you can notice a second man there as well. The couple spent their night at a casino, and for this reason, the wife believes the two men followed them home from the casino, hoping to rob them of any of their winnings. Fortunately, they made it inside safely. The suspect with the gun was identified by police as 18-year-old Al-Hussein Drameh, and he was arrested on October 26th. He faced multiple charges, including burglary in the first degree, and he pleaded not guilty to all of them. With this fourth video, we move to something a little more paranormal. This was caught on a TikToker named Nolan Brock's indoor Ring security camera while he was sleeping on the couch. At 1:39 in the morning, he's awoken to the pantry doors opening and some kind of cracks or bangs coming from either inside the pantry or from the doors themselves. With the fan running, the thought of it being a draft wasn't out of the question per se. He ignored it and tried to go back to sleep, but 4 minutes later at 1:43, this happened. One of the doors is aggressively yanked shut, and this officially removes any possibility of a draft being the cause of the doors moving. It's safe to assume he slept in his bed the rest of the night. This next video also comes from inside of a house instead of the front porch, and this one can play on one of the biggest fears of a lot of people, and that is someone lurking around your house as you sleep. In Wichita, Kansas, a family's Ring cameras captured some terrifying video footage of a stranger standing directly over sleeping 15-year-old Anaya Robinson at around 2:30 a.m. on a Friday night. This was the footage captured. Anaya said once she opened her eyes, she felt like she was in a scene from a horror movie, seeing somebody sitting over her, watching her that she didn't know. Anaya rushed to her mother Angel's room, screaming there's somebody in the house, and after being jolted awake, Angel made sure her 2-year-old daughter and Anaya were safe in a room before calling the police. Wichita police responded quickly, but the intruder was already gone. It's likely the boy entered the house simply through the front door. Luckily, the Ring cameras clearly caught his face, and using this footage, the police acted on a tip and were able to arrest a 14-year-old boy whose name was not released. The boy faced aggravated burglary and theft charges. In November 2021, a woman reported on Twitter that a creepy-looking man had been standing outside of her apartment almost every night for an entire month. She included a few of the videos caught by her Ring camera, and it shows the man creepily standing there for extended periods of time, facing her door. At certain points, he can be heard speaking. But what he says is impossible to hear. The woman resorted to posting this on Twitter after her complaints to the police apparently fell on deaf ears. It was a few days after her initial post that she posted an update stating that her friends and family confronted the man, which seemingly got him to stop. Additionally, the post going viral prompted her building security to do an additional routine throughout the night. I can't seem to find her Twitter profile anymore, so there don't appear to be any updates on the matter. And in this last video, an El Paso resident's Ring camera catches what appears at first to be a woman in danger seeking help at their front door in the middle of the night. But this may be a much more sinister situation than that. At first, the woman appears to be in distress, possibly on the run from someone, crying and pleading for help. But things start getting suspicious when she hides anytime a car is approaching. Is she hiding from a specific person chasing after her? Or is she perhaps trying to not be seen from any passerbys? After the neighbor's driveway light turns on, a car's headlights approach from the right, and she's seen casually walking away, presumably to get in that unseen car, perhaps because her driver was growing paranoid that too much attention was being drawn, so they needed to leave. Now you can say that's just a far-fetched theory of mine, but a month later, El Paso police arrested a woman who was charged with burglary of habitation. That woman was Krista Nicole Cordeaux. The woman in the video looks identical to the woman in this mugshot. The charge this woman faced is defined as the act of entering any building illegally with the plan to do something serious, such as harming the owner, damaging property, or stealing. Suddenly, the prospect that this woman could have been trying to trick an unsuspecting person into opening their door doesn't seem so far-fetched. As always, keep your doors locked and be careful who you open them to.